And we are recording on Monday, July 31st, 2023 at 4:09 p.m. Eastern Time with Dr. Judy Mikovits and your book Ending Plague: A Scholar's Obligation in the Age of Corruption. The link to that book is in the description. We talked I want to say right around Father's Day, like the day after Father's Day last. Um and I know that episode was received wildly positively, and people said that you're a magnetic character, and I do believe that, and I agree with that. But Dr. Judy, please introduce yourself, and then take the podcast in whatever direction you want.
Well, yeah, I'm Judy Mikovits. I have a PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology. That PhD, which I defended November 14th of 1991, ended the AIDS pandemic, and and now we appreciate through our 4 books, Plague of Corruption, Ending Plague, and The Truth About the Mask, that the pandemic called COVID-19 was just actually premeditated murder of all of the 3-letter agency corrupt FDA, CDC, Fauci, NIH, NCI that since 1984 knew how to cure AIDS through the biological response modifiers program, and our work at Fort Detrick with Dr. Frank Rossetti, the co-author on the last book, Ending Plague, walks through all of the corruption and how it's been planned all along, not just by Tony Fauci, but by Bob Gallo, and
Hmm.
this is what then President Ronald Reagan realized is, when he told Fauci when vaccines were dangerous. Remember the movie 1986, The Act. That's the movie about how vaccines and the 1986 National Vaccine Injury Act or compensation program that was set up by, Barbara Loe Fisher, who wrote the book in 1984 called A Shot in the Dark. And one of my attorneys for my civil rights case, the 42 USC 1983, is the best single civil rights case or civil rights law in all of history. And that law basically said you can't discriminate for any reason. So when after I was kidnapped and jailed and held there as they tried to kill me or get my husband to try to get me to kill myself. We all know about the suicided in jail now,
Mm-hmm.
the suicide cells. So our first book, all about the jailing and arrest, and every other part of the rest of that book was showing you how the Lipkins, Fauci's, Collins, Varmus, how the corrupt medical literature, medical media that is criminal fraud, as we see in the forward of our book, Plague of Corruption, that 34-page forward of Bobby Kennedy's is really a chapter for when he realized after he read that book, and J.B. Handley and Kent Heckenlively had already drafted the forward, and for him in October of 2019. And so then in there, I gave a talk with Ty and Charlene Bollinger in October of 2019 at The Truth About Cancer. And the title of that talk, I thought it was going to be Healing with Natural Products, like I always do. But the title of that talk was that Ty and Charlene gave to me was Persecution and Cover Up. And then Mike Hugo, who had been my attorney throughout. This was 2019, starting in 2015 and 16, thanks to Kent Hecken Lively calling him and sending him my book. He literally called me one day and said, "You have no idea what you stepped in, do you?" And I said, "No, but as the FBI was outside of my window in Carlsbad, California, the agents trying to cover up that Mike Hugo was, the kidnapping and the corruption and what happened in the Ventura County jail, and over those 5 to 6 days that I was held there, literally kidnapped by people impersonating, and this was all directed by Tony Fauci. I was called a felony fugitive from justice. Oh, if I step foot on Fort Detrick to do the Lipkin replication study. Oh, Ian Lipkin, who's, Thomas Rentz is now appropriately, having lawsuits, and we will get criminal charges against Lipkin, Michael Bush, who was supposed to be head of the blood supply, and John Coffin. Because all knew those papers were criminal fraud. In the journal Science, perpetrated the criminal fraud. And John Coffin admitted on film, so we go all the way back to pandemic indoctrination and how the love wins and the God wins is people like Mickey Willis, people like Del Bigtree, the High Wire, Bobby Kennedy, Children's Health Defense, Brian Hooker, Suzanne Humphreys, Ernie Hancock, Freedom's Phoenix, the people who let me talk, who didn't censor, who saw and tried to help me, like Mike Hugo, an environmental lawyer. So everyone knew I couldn't pay him because I was censored. So Michael Hugo had cases of cancer. He had a single large class action suit of cancer, environmentally caused, around Fort Detrick, where I worked, in Fort Detrick, for 22 years. See, everybody's trying to make this the China virus. Everybody's trying to steer you back towards SV40. Oh no, we knew that a long time ago at Fort Detrick, Adi Gazdar. And so I just sent, my team, my media Substack team, I sent them the talk I gave November of 2016, summer of 2016. Why was I doing something called the whistleblower documents, dissecting the whistleblower documents, a study of corruption at Autism One, Brian Hooker, PhD, Judy Mikovits, PhD, Candace Estave, who did the tiny URLs, one of the first people who made me go viral from our yacht club in 2000, probably 16, when I was held silenced after I get out of jail. And it was all in our book. And Ian Lipkin right there admitting, oh yeah, they found retroviruses in 85% of these. But what was the replication study? Not that the XMRVs weren't isolated from people with cancers, weren't natural isolates, weren't various clones associated with various disease. What was the thing that Lipkin was going to make sure, and he did through this criminally fraudulent science paper that published in 2012, but in 2011, John Coffin there, September in Canada, oh, wait a minute, in Canada, Ottawa, Canada, I give the talk in the journal Science. And this is what I tell everybody to do, search the journal Science, go sciencemag.org and search Mikovits and Cohen, or Mikovits and Enserink, Enserink. These are journalists. They're not scientists. They write op-ed articles called Science News that appear in the journals, and Enserink works for Nature. So you've got the Elsevier journals, corrupt Elsevier journals, Nature, and all of the ones that the New England Journal of Medicine, JAMA. Think about who promoted and perpetrated the FDA fraud. Well, it's the media, but it's also the doctors and pharmacists who are reading what the New England Journal of Medicine all the way back in 1415. And we have this in all of our books, so I don't remember their names right now, but my legal defense was Kent Heckenlively, my lawyer, because when I got out of jail, I could talk to nobody except my husband or my lawyer. And my husband made a vow with Harvey Whittemore that, who planted the notebooks in my house on the 5th day I'm held in jail. We absolutely proved this. Mike Hugo absolutely proved everything they did, the conspiracy, the RICO case. I had a whistleblower's case, and the whole FBI and DOJ was looking at it since 2014 in November, when our first book published. We handed the FBI and the DOJ, we had a 5-hour discussion that I paid my lawyer then, David Folan, for literally with all the evidence that Kent did from the minute I got out of jail in 2022. Legal documents. I couldn't talk to anybody but my lawyer could. And my lawyer, Ken Heckenlively, is a very good lawyer. And he talked to everybody. He said, today I want to talk about, and every one of them was taped, turned into testimony, legal testimony, declarations that printed and notarized became affidavits. So we had literally a qui tam, it's called a whistleblower lawsuit, and a 42 USC 1983 that Michael Hugo acted as my lawyer drafting it, because again, that's not his area of law. And how I paid him was being an expert witness on the case, showing him the science between the cancer coming out of Fort Detrick. 5 different kinds of cancer in the water. Any Brian Artist coming to you right now? Exactly. How do I know? Because the data never lie. And so the study in corruption, dissecting the whistleblower documents. What was that other famous email I wrote August 20, and when I met Brian Hooker, August 29th of 2014. Our first book didn't even come out. So I didn't know it had anything to do with William Thompson. I didn't know in 2014 that of the FDA corruption. I make immune therapies for a living. I make vaccines, are immune therapies for a living, oral from botanicals, oral, nutraceuticals, as well as that patent I have for the Genius Omnitura. All of these data, Genius Omnitura, we presented to DARPA. We presented right there in Fort Detrick, between 11 and 16 when I was held silent. The only thing I couldn't say was XMRV, but I continued to consult for the companies who had the botanical, who had the drugs the FDA refused to approve, regardless of where the gain of function virus came from. That was the whole point. HIV was gain of function, but it never did cause AIDS. When you crippled somebody with antibody dependent enhancement, what you did, that one slide I show over and over again, why the Dallas Buyers Club? How are we lied to? Why was the Dallas Buyers Club, the movie made in 2013? Why? Because That's the day that, or that's the year that Candace Pert died. Who was Candace Pert? Well, she was the discoverer of peptide T, but in fact, the whole field of endorphins, molecules of emotion. There's no such thing as mass formation psychosis. As we know from Blandemic 3, it simply says mass formation. The psychosis was put on there in order to make people think everybody just went crazy. No, these injections, what was the Lipkin study doing? Oh, sure, we'll replicate that you isolated those viruses from little children with autism. Oh, we'll replicate that you isolated the virus from people with Lyme disease, which is HIV/AIDS. There's no such thing as Lyme disease. They weaponized the Borrelia and the XMRV. That part of the virus is in another plasmid. Now we know, we're seeing things from Substacks like Second Smartest Guy and other people who are publishing papers saying, oh, there's SV40 in COVID shots. No, there was SV40 in every single shot since 1962. The cell lines where we manufacture, we isolate, we manufacture the poisons. We manufacture the viruses. We injected those cell lines, animal, monkey, mouse, kidney. This is Sherry Tenpenny's work all the way back to 2005. This is what I was doing after I got out of jail. I had, now it's counting almost 12 years since, since I wrote that infamous email in our first book, Plague. And I wrote it to the head, Simone Glenn, the head doctor of the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute. And I showed him how the John Coffin and Company directed the fraud of saying the blood supply wasn't contaminated by manipulating a consensus PCR, which I used in our paper, meaning it found all strains, all variants. Let's just say all XMRVs associated with diseases, whether they were cancer or neuroimmune. And this is what Dr. Rossetti says in the first half of Ending Plague. Everybody needs to see that book, read that book, get that audio, because this is how they did it all the way back to Luc Montagnier. They didn't want me. I'm 65. I was 25 years old when I first cussed out Tony Fauci and Bob Gallo on the phone. It wasn't Fauci. I never worked with Fauci. I never worked for Fauci. They were collaborative efforts, and all Fauci wanted was, and his clinical associate of those 40 years, H. Clifford Lane, all they wanted was to be on the Tonight Show. All they wanted was to be famous. All they wanted, while the President Reagan and the President of France fought over who owned the diagnostic test, the antibody, the serology. Why is all this important? Because nobody owns your antibodies. Nobody owns your ideas. There's no such thing as intellectual property theft. The taxpayers paid for my brain for the second all my education from 1976 until, literally when I was, kidnapped and all of my constitutional rights removed. On November 18th, 2011, I was kidnapped, just like the J6ers. That's why nobody knew about my arrest in pandemic indoctrination. No, I was never charged with anything. No, that wasn't a mugshot they put in the journal Science. You're looking at a media event. You're looking at a PSYOP where literally everybody I've named through here and attorneys, the Ninth Circuit Court, my criminal attorney, my civil attorneys, literally committing crimes against humanities. The attorneys, the DOJ, they've had every bit of the evidence of the viruses, of the corruption, of the contamination of the blood supply. That's why Simone Glenn, because we're going to use a different PCR and we're only going to look for an infectious molecular clone, a synthetic RNA called VP62. That was never in humans. But that wasn't a natural isolate. We were isolating the natural isolates and showing you the cytokine storm and developing the diagnostic tests. This is what I've done since 1983, but since 1980, as a fermentation chemist, I've been developing and designing the isolation methods and the manufacture and the cell line models to grow the viruses to make vaccines from. So where's the problem? Well, the FDA, the HHS, everybody else involved, even Congress, when all liability was removed, HHS, Health and Human Services, was supposed to do safety testing on all vaccines, on all biologicals they were calling vaccines. What did they never do that we all learn from Aaron Siri, from the Informed Consent Action Network, from Del Bigtree, from the High Wire? What did we all learn in 2019? Right around the time I'm giving that talk at The Truth About Cancer, persecution and cover-up. September 7th, 2011, when the patient advocacy group said government agencies are scared to death if XMRV works out. What do you mean, works out? You mean if it has anything to do with autism, neuroimmune disease, every single one of the diseases that right now the COVID vaccines are causing, every single kind of cancer, and not just the vaccines, but the glyphosate, the environmental toxins. Remember, Hugo and Kennedy are environmental lawyers. How did the glyphosate, the Food and Drug Administration, is safety. Bobby Kennedy won the case, Children's Health Defense, all the lawyers, won the case in 2015. 2015, that glyphosate caused cancer. The same kind of cancer we showed in our studies, in our papers from 2009 when our science paper came out. So by 2011, the government and John Coffin and Jonathan Stoye, who wrote the accompanying article to that science paper that the journal Science shredded after the reviewers saw it. All of this is criminal fraud. So John Coffin and Jonathan Stoye should be arrested right now. And they admitted on film in 2021, in a documentary that's so heavily censored that nobody saw it. And they should be charged with my husband's murder and my daughter-in-law's murder, because they were the ones that perpetrated this fraud. So
I'm
that
pulling up your.
ivermectin
Sorry, I'm
and the
pulling up your book right now. I'm listening. Keep going.
yeah, and pull up, we can go to sciencemag.org and start doing, all of this is on our website, and all of it's in newsletters and substacks as we've been writing them. And in our last conversation, this paid troll used my husband's name as a username. You're in my husband's account. You are responsible for my husband's murder. And you are going to be held accountable, every one of you. A new virus. How many old diseases? Oh, we got a new drug target, folks. No, how many new viruses have we created, John Coffin? And what did you do in that journal Science? False positive. Oh, do you think you convinced the Whittemores to make sure Judy Mikovits went away forever and to have me arrested to fabricate this crime? To have me arrested, to have your goons come to Ventura and torture my husband and torture me and threaten him to the point where he had to make a vow not to ever tell a word about this, under threat that we'd be killed. In our books, we were hunted. I was hunted like an animal, all the summer of 2011. Who has that kind of power? Felony fugitive from justice was Tony Fauci, Pharma, Fauci, Pharma. And now he's at Georgetown. Oh, where does that fit in? Oh, where that fits in is, where was he speaking? Supposedly Christian organization. Where were you speaking when you promised then President Trump a little flu outbreak that we all know you cloned, just as you cloned the SARS-CoV-2 in 2004 and published it in the Moore paper in Journal of Virology? You see, they have to tell you everything. The movies have to lie to you. So it's not the data, the science that's fraud. It's the interpretation of the data. It's the message the medical students are being taught that is a lie. It's the pharma poison you model that never had anything to do with health, all while the FDA keeps us from having nutritious food. We don't have to make label claims about foods that are generally avoided, generally regarded as safe. GRAS is botanicals. It's a 2005 law. I can manufacture, and as long as I prove you don't get the cytokine storm when I make that into a product and show it in a nutraceutical. Yeah, that's the point. We don't have to make a label claim for our God. And the FDA never again will any of us, hear me well, any of us, put stupid language and hide data from people on how berberine is healthy for you and who manufactures the safest products. Nattokinase is a deadly drug if used improperly. You don't take it and add curcumin from your garden. You have to make sure there's no glyphosate in it. Curcumin is a large molecule that's not bioavailable. You don't nanoize everything. You don't have any authority, FDA, over God. I'll make label claims for my God all I want. And our natural immunity healed David Nolde. Our natural immunity proved beyond a shadow of a doubt in his autopsy that now absolute proof that no matter how much COPD he had, no matter how many shots he got in his life, the minute we stopped that in 2014, thanks to brilliant doctors, Kent Brantley, Dr. John, the book is called called for life, Kent and Amber Brantley. It should be in our Get Healthy store. This is how we get healthy when we end the censorship. And the subtitle was sort of like how loving one's neighbor. Think about the language and how they use the language against us. How loving one's neighbor sent us into the heart of the Ebola outbreak in Sierra Leone. That in 2014. Who did that? Oh, Tony Fauci and Obama killed 21,000 Liberians with the Ebola that came straight from Fort Detrick. And again, I know that because I made the cell line clone and I characterized the cytokine storm from that variant, from that strain of virus. We're not our infections. In the laboratory, we have created hundreds of Epstein-Barr viruses, of HHV6s, of EBVs, of HHV4, hundreds of recombinant viruses as bioweapons. And they've been injected in vaccines in order to target particular populations and cultures. Absolutely racist to inject a little Black boy with a different vitamin D response from a little white boy. And that's what we know. And our Constitution and our law says you can't force one person to die. That's what Ronald Reagan told Tony Fauci in 1984. Why don't you make them safer? As
You're inherently
as
unsafe.
like Hugo. They're
Unavoidably unsafe. Yeah.
Exactly. Who dies? Black people, Hispanics, Native American. Not me. Same thing with cholesterol. A Cherokee Indian's healthiest cholesterol, Indian woman's healthy cholesterol is 270. We're poisoned with a test that never had anything to do with health, that had to do with weakening the strongest in our culture. That HIV, that G protein in the Borrelia, the strain that Willie Bordorferi, they made certain variants, and those plasmids are in the worms. I worked with Ava Sappi in the middle of 2011 through 14. And when our paper came out in 2009, and it was in the journal Science, and they said everybody saw it. All the doctors could see, oh, this will work on that cancer, that cancer, that cancer. And we had the technology and the platform to do it through the Genius Omnitura company who I'd been working with since 2005. And we showed this in our class online at Odom last week, and we show it in our newsletter. We talk about it. We take clips. What Natokin Plus, the supplement from Nutritional Frontiers, is the appropriate multifunctional, multi-targeted platform strategy. That's what we can do. And the FDA says, oh, you can't do that. All the while making label claims for drugs and allowing doctors to prescribe drugs that are deadly. And this is what Del Bigtree showed you with Ozempic and others. And I should say Jeffrey Jackson on the High Wire last week. So you see, we talk, my team of independent volunteers who, just want to help me because, they're just always good people. Ken Heck and Lively, Johanna and Rich with the Odom platform, on-demand education marketplace, because the censorship is at the heart of what's keeping America from being healed and healthy. And so the censorship, as we heard, and then you spit the platitudes. So as Bobby gets to showing everybody, and movies like 1986theact.com, go find it, 1986 The Act, you'll see right there Michael Hugo. And the movie was made, let's see, 2020? It came out in 2020 or 2019, really early into this. We were having watch parties at people's houses like Plandemic. And so the heroes in all of this is we here in California fought the corruption pan, a bought and paid for criminal, poisoning. I show that slide from standing on the street corner at the public health in Oxnard as innocent, Hispanics and military veterans are going in there to get shots, where little babies, SB 276, intended to look like it came before 277. No, our religious freedom was removed in 2000 in the SB 277 bill, all the way back, I think, in 11 or 12 here, when I got fired and arrested. Those people, Vile, Michelle Ford, the Reverend Tony Muhammad, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, he called us all December 18th, 2020. And I say all, Dr. Neuenschwinder, Dr. Jack Lyons Weiler, me, many doctors from the nation, Bobby Kennedy. We had a room of about 20 people, and he sat us all around and he said, show me the data. I want to know, do I recommend this to my people? And at the end of the day, he said, I got it. It's not the presence of the virus that causes the disease. It's the expression. How do we protect? We prevent them from being poisoned with glyphosate. We prevent GMO food. GMO food is poison. I show it in the Trends in Parasitology paper from 2014. They walk through the poison and the mechanisms of how the mRNAs, we have small inhibitory RNAs, we have long chain non-coding RNAs that are our own immune systems sending fire trucks to the fire. Yes, our exosomes, lipid bilayers, envelope-like viruses with our own virus envelope or spike sticking through it, go to are trafficked there by chemokines and cytokines. But the doctors have been lied to about seeing the data. And when these books came out and we kept fighting the censorship, people like you and me, sorry, turn the phone off, when we kept fighting the censorship, this is why it's so important. We're totally over the target now. And now we have proof beyond a shadow of a doubt of immunity. Now, as school starts, now as everything goes back, the masks are illegal. That any PCR test is unlawful. We can choose an oral or mucosal immunization strategy for COVID-19 for every childhood disease. Not one child will ever be inoculated again against their will, because we've written and published. And this is Dr. Shannon Kroner's new book is what we released.
I just had her on.
Yeah, showing you how we win. I'm unvaccinated, and that's okay. We're going to get the fear out of the kids. We're going to get the masks off the kids. Masks will be made illegal unless they're the True 47 or similar micron technology, the silver and copper masks that cancer patients will now need as the victims shedding these synthetic proteins are around. Sorry, I forgot this.
You're good.
I just have to tell her I'm at church. She's coming to my house.
No, you're good. You're good. For everybody listening, the link to the book is in the description. Yeah, and it is
Yeah.
yeah.
So yeah, so that's so you see we have all the proof and ending plague. If you listen to it, you'll see it goes all the way back, to 1975. And this is when then John Coffin told Frank Rossetti, there's no such thing as disease as human retroviruses don't bother to study them, which of course Frank said all animals have retroviruses, you moron, and plants do as well. He probably did call him a moron because Frank talks like I talk, and we talk to each other this way, and most people will know that. And this is where, yes, I've had to work very hard over the last 12 years because while I can cuss at Frank Rossetti all day long and he'll just find the data and prove it, poor little John Coffin gets his feelings hurt, or Fauci gets his feelings hurt if I tell him what he can do to himself because he's poisoning Americans. And I caught him, and I'm sorry. Some things really deserve those words. But I'm also sorry because I know that's not how we win. And I know that speaking the truth in love, and I do appreciate Joe Severchik from Skyhorse. He was the first editor on the first book, and the disclaimer in that book, the hardback, sounds like the ravings of a mad woman. I believe. So I had to say, I believe. I couldn't say, I believe this happened. No, I knew it for a fact, and I had the data to prove it. And Kent Heckenlively, as I said in the beginning, had every literally testimony as a testimony. We were censored. We couldn't do anything. Nobody could talk to me. And when we filed that Key Tam whistleblower lawsuit in November of 2014. Again, we gave these data to the FBI in May of 2014. The FBI is the one that caused COVID, folks. And we see why, folks, because it all goes back to what Fauci promised, that Trump would not be president. It all goes back to all of this because Trump and Bobby Kennedy know absolutely every word of this because they've had the hard drive and everything I handed to the Ninth Circuit Court in May of 2014. And yet we had to stay silent all the way through 19, meaning me. I had to stay silent because the Ninth Circuit Court and the DOJ, the corrupt DOJ, was still deciding on whether or not I could have whistleblower status and be protected, and they could take the case to the American people and charge the appropriate people for the crime. So you hear whistleblower status. So dissecting the whistleblower document, a study in corruption, is what I presented along with Brian Hooker, Michael R. Hugo attorney, and Candace Estave from one of the first advocacy groups here in California that fought and fought and fought for vaccine injured children to stop them from being injected and causing more injury. You cannot put a mask on somebody with cancer. You cause cancer. We knew that. Is every single person who covered up these data. Let's just remember Tess Lawrie, on film, and this is the High Wire and Del Bigtree. He showed on film this guy, Andrew, I forgot his last name, Hill or whatever, as the advocacy group corrupted the paper. People who pay for papers don't get authorship. People who pay for, nobody gets authorship for taxpayer data. Nobody owns my brain. There's no such thing as intellectual property theft. It's my brain. It's the taxpayers. That's what I protected since the day I was fired, but more than importantly, the day I learned all of this. There were lots of days, but I saw what John Coffin did. I knew he reviewed that paper. He admitted it on film in 2021, and then proceeded to have my husband killed, as nobody would give, and my daughter-in-law. for honoring their God and saying, no, I got immunity and I'm going to honor my wife and my vows to my wife. Those doctors, 2014, the day, the book I just talked to you about, Called for Life. That was then Dr. John, who heads up Ventura County Healthcare right here. A friend of ours went to our church. Does God have a sense of humor? Friends of ours. And they knew, they knew. And he was quick thinking as soon as he saw it couldn't be aerosolized. As soon as he saw that doesn't make any sense, it looks like it's aerosolized. Ebola going through the air. What did I write in that email, August 31st, 2011, when the blood supply was 10 to 12% contaminated with lots of XMRVs associated with PTSD, with every inflammatory disease that is now you're susceptible to COVID? Well, of course you are, because they're going to kill you with the shot by antibody-dependent enhancement, pathogenic priming mechanisms, the cytokine storm that even in the presence of oral antiretroviral therapy, even in the presence of oral antiretroviral therapy, injecting anything into a man, woman, or child with HIV will cause the expression of the virus, even if you're taking oral. These oral antiretroviral therapy. This is called Intelligence. This one's called Descovy. I have Genvoya. I have ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine. Those are oral immunization strategies. Why? Watch the TV set. Oh, your copy number 0. They give these away thanks to ACT UP. ACT UP. The first victims of Fauci's first hate crime was killing the gays, Fauci and Gallo. It's all there. ACT UP. That's what Mickey's movie was about. I didn't even say XMRV. It was you got a virus to drive a diagnostic test to drive a drug market. That was the game. The virus never caused the disease. But now the bioweapons are causing the disease. And now we see who's dying. And we now see how they targeted or protected certain Jewish populations because we understand genetic susceptibilities in cultures. It's not a genetic susceptibility if you're a person of color. That means you have different vitamin D receptors. They deliberately turned down our interferon antenna so we wouldn't make type 1 interferon. That's what you make when you sneeze for a virus infection. That's why your nasal exudate, your snot, is clear. That's type 1 interferon. What don't you do? Put on a mask and drive the inflammatory response through hypoxia-inducible factor. I can see my work being reproduced and published today from my notebooks, from the laboratory that was locked down the day I was fired. And Tony Fauci ordered every piece of data and everything in the freezer with the code, and only I knew who the people were. That's a violation of HIPAA. Where did they go? Oh, do you think they went to a secret CIA place in Windber, Pennsylvania? Do you think we have all the cell lines that produce all the SV40s and all the plasmids? What was the last chapter of Plague of Corruption? When Bobby Kennedy said, oh my God, and then wrote that 34-page forward to show the corruption at the CDC in every vaccine program, everyone, HHS, Health and Human Services. What hasn't happened since 1986? The FDA, the CDC, NIH, in every form, and all of the DOJ have deliberately disobeyed in collusion, in RICO, racketeering, to through that vaccine compensation program, know exactly how to injure and poison the strongest in our society, including the military. I did those cases. I did those cases as expert witness. I showed the data. I have the names, and I'm going to publish them in our Substack in their entirety, as with Michael Hugo's lawsuit for me, where he did my 42 USC 1983, and he got so much of it right. And we didn't even know all of the corruptions. I didn't know till the last words of my husband's life. I was mad at him, I guarantee you, and this is how God wins. I was pretty mad at him for those 11 years. I said, honey, if only you'd made a copy of what they planted there, and the ransom you had to take in the middle of the night to the Ventura County jail to get me released. And the people at the jail said, I have no idea what you're talking about. Why was I dumped in a parking lot after the hearing? You know, it's like no processing, no nothing in November of 2023. Why did the Ventura County Star publish November 23rd, 2014? Go look at it. Go look at it. Oh, it said something like, it was a picture of me and my David as we're living on our boat. And what does it say? She lives on this boat with her husband on his retirement. You know, what did they finally think they got for me? The day they killed him and called it COVID. You know, oh, his retirement. You know, I'm shut out of all of it, and we've lost everything for nothing if the death certificate says COVID. Well, thank God to a lawyer, and my lawyer, Jim Lloyd, and my pastor, Rob McCoy, and literally Mickey and everybody, thousands of people since 2011, as we all, you know, honored a promise to God. They all let me talk. They all listened to me. It was my lawyer, David Folan, who taught me not to let my lawyers yell at me. They would yell at me. You wouldn't believe when the criminal charges were dropped after Harvey Whittemore was charged. This was all also about election fraud. Oh, because what did Harvey Whittemore do more than once? He had Harry Reid illegally elected. He was sentenced and charged and not sent to jail until 14. And one of these little fake jailings, like they, you know, let's just say like they gave Simone Gold, you know, the country club, not how they tortured the true J6ers who were kidnapped, not how they tortured me. You know, how they tortured the people that became FBI informants, or how they tortured the people who went after us, how they went after the people who tortured, you know, go look at it. Go look at the Ventura County paper. Why was that in there? You know, and the title of it, the article's by Tom Kisken, Kisken, but more importantly, it's the Ventura County Star. And watch how the media is targeting Godspeak Church, me, putting us together as if somehow I did that, even in 2021, you know, to stop elections. Yeah, election fraud was what was charged before you had the super PACs, when an individual couldn't give more than $6,000. It's all there. It's all federal record. We've got, you know, and everybody's going to see it. How the bankruptcy court was corrupt. How the bankruptcy court was corrupted. You know, I filed bankruptcy because somebody told me I owed $10 million. I knew I never had a contract with the Whittemores. I don't sign contracts. I'm an independent investigator. That's what's wrong, that we don't have independence. I don't take benefits. I won't take a shot. I never did. That's why I've never signed a contract, because I won't be held. I won't be held to your health insurance. It's not health insurance. And this is what I'll continue to say. And Medicare, you're going to pay for Cardio Miracle, Proline Greens, Natacan Plus. You're going to pay for every one of the healing strategies. because we've got them all in the freezer, every monoclonal antibody. You're not going to repurpose anything. You give these away on the streets of San Francisco and charge the taxpayers $10,000. And then you put on a commercial that you can go live your lifestyle any way you want, and your copy number will be 0. Do you know what that is? That's a vaccine. So now every single person who they injected with HIV and chronic Lyme disease is HIV. The G protein is one and the same as CCR5. That's what Candace Pert discovered, peptide T. Oh, we had the cure to all of this since 1983, and the FDA wouldn't let any of it be approved. Well, now we don't care about you, FDA, because you're a criminal. We're done. I'm selling it. I'm handing it to you free out the door. I am the Dallas Buyers Club, and come and get me, FDA, because you don't make the law. You don't make the law. Congress makes the law. You don't make the law, and you're a criminal. I don't have to make label claims for our God. And if my intellectual property and that of all those honest doctors came up with solutions, no matter the weapon you tried to form against us, thanks to people, again, all the way back to HIV. Magic Johnson was antibody positive. He didn't get forced to take AZT. Mickey Willis got forced to take AZT. If you, the government, disabled somebody, they don't have to live on the dole and not earn any other money because you disabled them. And then you poison them with another drug, which is what they're doing right now. They created all of these drugs. Watch the TV tonight, your audience. Watch. Oh, look at all the COPD drugs. Watch the high wire last week. Ozempic, fraud, criminal fraud. When you ask your doctor if these drugs are right for you, you've given up informed consent and you've agreed to be conducting an experiment. These drugs aren't FDA approved. They are not safe. They have black box warnings on them. They have not done large enough trials in variable association. There is no one target for a chronic disease, and every person will be injured. So everything that is true about the 1986 Act and you're liability free. When are they free for liability? When you ask your doctor and he gives you a free sample, you're participating in an experiment. Stop it, folks. Go nowhere near your doctor. Go nowhere near a grocery store with a pharmacy in it. Don't go near a Starbucks who puts you in a, don't go where anybody who puts you in a mask. And masks are going to be illegal on every plane. Nobody should sit in an exit row with a mask on and put me at risk because I can't hear you. I will still fight that arrest March 10th, 2021, when I was beat up on an airplane in Santa Barbara, Sergeant Spurlock. Yeah, we're going to come after you. We're still coming after you. Because what did I get on my husband's deathbed? Of course I made a copy, honey. What do you think? I'm stupid? Ha ha. With the last breath my husband uttered, and I got the stuff, and I'm proving it to everybody. So have some fun, John Coffin, and whoever paid for that Ventura newspaper article to come out, because my finger was pointing to COVID. Oh, why was my finger pointing to a picture of COVID syncytia, that snake venom peptide? Why was I pointing to that in 2004? Because I took that picture in 2006 when I knew the cytokine storm, which variant of HHV6, which one? Yeah, which variant, which strain, which virus? Who did the PCR consensus in the beginning in that blood paper, in that science paper when the blood supply was contaminated? I used a consensus PCR that would detect every single variant. What do you think the government's doing right now? Oh, the government right now, of course they can tell you when they release Omicron, because they injected it in every single polio shot since 2004. Or the Flunami. which my friend, I won't say her name, the Flunami virus, one of the doctor friends. So yeah, 2004, read it all. Look at John Cullen. We just did a long conversation again with John Cullen. We first talked on Jason Goodman's show, so hashtag I am John Cullen, and we follow him on Twitter.
I've had him on before.
Exactly, because it was influenza. Influenza didn't go away with the masks. Are we really that stupid as a people? Are we really that stupid? No, we're not. And it just, now they're just going to say, it all came back, put them back on. Folks, gotcha. The gotcha is now. Now we've got, so my husband went into that hospital with a proof of immunity, and Shannon wrote it. For unitedsolutions.org, for.us.org. And all I did was modify it to proof of immunity. I have antibodies. My husband seroconverted to Omicron. XMRV2 is what it is. Omicron. They just changed the name. How did VP62 get in a bat cave in China in October of 2011? When Shih-Jing Li published the Journal of Virology paper, the meta-analysis, all the sequences in all the shots. This is what David Martin is telling you. The coronaviruses were the UNCs, the retroviruses were the Fort Detrichs. All the cancer, 5 different types of cancer Mike Hugo found in one hospital. I think of the courageous Kelly Gallagher, who had 5 different types of cancer. She gave me the Badass Award in 2017 as we were, it was an award ceremony. I'll find the exact title of the meeting. She survived 5 different types of cancer. Here's the thing. We use our immunity, we use our plants, we use botanicals, we use the targeted drugs that we made. We protect using the Genius and Omnitura platform. And we've got every one of the drugs we need, and we don't need to repurpose anything. And the FDA has absolutely no say-so. I've been using these since 1983. I tell all the HIV positive people, my friends from back in GW, they didn't get AIDS. If you don't think they're grateful for my work, they've supported me for, I don't know, the better part of 40 years, but especially since I got arrested. And they say, Judy, how do I do it? How do I make sure I test HIV negative and they don't kill me with their highly active antiretroviral therapy that costs the taxpayers $10,000? Hear me. For every HIV infected person, whether they are a citizen or not. And this was denied. In 2010, when Dr. Andy Mason, who discovered the HBRV, human beta retrovirus, they denied us using these therapies when the benefits to the patients far outweighed the risk. When it was clear, September 6th and 7th, 2010, the first and last XMRV workshop. It's right there in the Truth About Cancer talk from 2019. Do we have to wait a long time for God to come around on us? It's like when I saw the first rough cut of pandemic that Mickey showed February 12th at the Hilton LAX Hilton during the Conscious Life Expo. It was the first rough cut where it wasn't quite finished, and I was on the panel afterward. I know we have a film of it somewhere, but I was on the film afterward, and I'm watching this movie. And I couldn't speak, which is my problem. You'll see it in my book. Whenever I get really upset, I can't utter the words. That is my fear zone. I've had, I've worked on that PTSD because of what happened, in my life. I never had a fear of talking to Fauci, my problem was I couldn't do it any different than my Cherokee Indian mother did it, which was not like Mickey Willis's kind. The other half of my family, the Salvation Army, the Christian one, was the Willis part of my family. I'm just saying. He's got those hazel blue eyes that we all have. So I don't know, maybe we're related, but at any rate, so after that, the panel gets up to talk at the end of the movie. And I couldn't, they asked me to say something. And the only thing that was, I couldn't utter a word without crying. Because and I just couldn't, and all I could think of, and finally Dell rescued me and just started talking, because it was a very long silence. But the only thing I could think of, and I was really talking to Jesus, was, what took you so long?
Yeah.
What took all this time? And I appreciate more and more every day with every sermon that Pastor Rob gives, how, that Gideon's army, the 3% stand up, and how it all is all about Jesus. It says, and if we truly live the 10 commandments, not only will we survive Babylon, which this is, but we thrive in Babylon. And that's the book I reference when our first book, when Plague of Corruption, came out. Because after our first book came out, I had to stay silent and trust. I could only talk to Kent Eckenlively. The books went censored. So every year, and even the whole time, the whole 10 years, 11 years, David Nolde was killed almost 11/11, almost exactly 11 years to the day. And I now realize, only because every time I said, he'd say, I got you out of jail. And I said, honey, God got me out of jail. And he'd go like this. And I'd said, if only you'd made a copy, my life wouldn't have been destroyed. But what would have happened to humanity? Who would have ever seen what the Ninth Circuit Court is doing to Trump? Who would have ever known they've had the thing since May? How could I ever know what Mike Hugo know about the cancers at Fort Detrick and all the things? The government shut down that case. And right after, as we know from Plague of Corruption, he filed something for me because the judge, his name was Wilson here in LA Circuit Court, because he respected Mike Hugo, and as a lawyer, he's fabulous too, because he expected it. He wasn't considered an anti-vaxxer. There wasn't an anti-vax thing then. It was a long time ago, 2014. This wasn't on the radar, but it's how the government, as quickly as they could, scared to death if XMRV works out. And they all admitted on tape in 2021, Lipkin, Bush with the blood supply, Michael Bush on that science paper, and John Coffin, who sat there in that Ottawa debate, Canada. Any idea there's not collusion between all of the government-funded agencies that Fauci gives out the billions of dollars, that pharma controls? No, you can't pay for a product. That's called a commercial. The FDA can't approve that, and that's why they do their phase 3 studies. Ask your doctor if it's right for you. You're participating in a trial. Eliquis killed my mom. After she got, in 2012, she got a flu shot, which is not a flu shot at all. It's Prevnar, 13 or 23 different antigens. That's 13 vaccines in a single needle with a boatload of aluminum. And then the other arm, these kids aren't getting one shot, is the flu shots grown in maiden Derby kidney cells or chicken eggs, where you got all the chicken virome. Do you know how many coronavirus? There's a deadly one in chickens, kill a whole flock. Oh, and they catch it that way. Which one do you think they grew in the maiden Derby kidney cell line that they gave the Italians in their overcrowded hospital? Oh, the Italians, the Gotti paper in 2017. Do you think they attacked Antoinette Gotti, of course, because she had the electron micrographs. She had the same thing we had in the rest of the vaccines that we had in 1980. Absolute proof. It's all an ending plague. That's why it's censored. It didn't come out for audio for a year. Is that Skyhorse Publishing's fault? I don't think so. I'm choosing to believe God's steering this entire thing. And I'm choosing to believe that we're all doing our job when we speak the truth in love. So we're going to keep sitting here speaking the truth in love. And I'm up here, and I'm in Godspeak Church. I got a new computer that I'll turn on after this, and I won't be censored anymore. We'll be teaching our classes, which are being censored away from the doctors. And now every single, it will be on For United Solutions, the law, the legal, the proof of immunity. Every single person can now choose. We're pro-choice in this country, aren't we? And when you're pro-choice, you're pro-life. That nobody has to be mandated to die so that somebody else is comfortable. We don't care if you're comfortable. And Medicare, you will not force me to pay for abortions. No, Medicare is going to pay for this, just like they pay for it for every single HIV infected person in this country. In 1991, why were they scared to death? If XMRV works out, September 11th, 2010. Do you think there's any accidents to these dates? You know, they do everything over 4th of July and Christmas because we might be with our families or at church. We might be practicing a Sabbath rest, so they go after you and try to spin you out of control. But, you know, fortunately, we did, and people, we stayed quiet those 15 years. So when I finally recovered at the movie, the only thing I said to the rest of the table was, what took you so long? You know, those of us, those heroes of the faith, you know, yeah, we're a bit, you might call me a harlot. Some might. Well, you know, there's no accident about my handsome boyfriends. There's no accident. You know, but again, the powers that be, you know, literally tried to destroy and probably came very close to, you know, they killed a lot of people. Luc Montagnier was murdered. You know, Joe Oppenheim by the shots. How many people died suddenly? And the shot, they knew who it would kill, the elderly. You know, what is your oral prophylactic? That would be a vaccine. These. And on TV, the FDA knows exactly how it works. What does the 2005 law say? If it's generally regarded as safe, and we can show you it reduces the inflammatory cytokine storm, yeah, the diagnostics we've got will prove it. And yeah, I have a PCR where I can tell you exactly what the variant is down to a single base pair. That's how good it is. We will prove what John Coffin did now that we have everything that was in that grocery bag with my initials at it that were planted in my house, and I was ransomed out of jail in the wee hours of November 22nd, 2011, in the wee hours at 2 in.the morning, you know, November 22nd. Any accident on those dates? I don't think so.
Nope.
We're going back to a constitution directed country, back to the 60s, where I hope, I know probably Michael Hugo is going to get mad at me sooner or later, but I think that man needs to be an attorney general somewhere, because I guarantee you with the 1986 Act, that compensation program that he wrote, if you watch the movie from Andy Wakefield, 1986, the Act, you see how Donna Shalala put the final blows in Fauci with the Bruchewitz decision of 2011, Kent Heckenlively's other books, inoculated. Again, these are all absolute proof that Adam Lanza was vaccine injured, had chronic Lyme disease, which is infection by injection. Tony Fauci is responsible for Sandy Hook, not Alex Jones. Obama is responsible for Sandy Hook. All of those people that in 2014 let it go, that Ebola came straight from Fort Detrick from the 1980s, SV40, Adi Gazdar's work of the 70s. We knew if you put 2 flasks in an incubator on top of each other with a 0.2 micron filter, that's 200 nanometers, nano. A virus is, a retrovirus is between 80, 50, an exosome's about 50. That's a human exosome. But a retrovirus is an animal's virus is right around 80 to 160 nanomolar, depending on how many other stuff they engineered into the virus in order to make their little gain of function, the little furin cleavage sites, whatever they put in there. Those were all in VP62. How did it end up in a bat cave a month after I was fired? I was fired for insolence and insubordination. And I had to ask Dr. Jamie, my friend Dr. Jamie, I said, what's insolence? And she said, were you rude? And I'm like, yeah, I think FU is kind of rude. I better stop that. But the insubordination is what I've lost every single job over. Insubordination is refusing a direct order to commit a federal crime, to commit any kind of crime, to commit a moral injustice, whether it's Upjohn Pharmaceuticals and their GMOs, which caused the explosion of obesity in our country. Oh, Ozempic. Oh, now the black box warning, watch the high wire from the last week. That's what I tell everybody, absolutely everybody in our show. So the God Wins will be our last book, where Kent and I are going to start writing it probably tomorrow. And God wins because love wins. And we're going to show the heroes of the faith right here. We're a motley crew here at Godspeak Church. Mickey Willis is going to show up August 5th on Friday. We've got some special surprises. I think we're even going to get G. Edward Griffin in the house.
And nice. Creature from Jekyll Island.
Every single one of the heroes that saved people with our Dallas Buyers Club 2023, where I don't care who tells me it's illegal, or I don't bow to that God and I don't have a license. I'm a PhD and no licenses anymore. No, nobody can ever tell you how to practice medicine. No, I don't need a license to drive a car in the United States of America. I drive on my Constitution. Interstate commerce is all the federal government is allowed to do. And if I'm not working for that federal government and I'm not doing business interstate commerce, you can't tax me for my car. And we're going back to the Constitution in every way, shape, or form. And Congress shall make no law denying any way me from life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. The very Constitution, our Declaration of Independence, the very first amendment, you cannot override the Constitution, WHO. You cannot. But the only ones who stop it is we the people. So we the people can buy anything we want. Nobody tells me I can label claims. I don't have to make label claims for my God. My God is the only immunity I need. And I don't bow down to a cult of scientism. So my felony fugitive from justice was the cult of scientism, which has nothing to do with science. The papers, the journals, clinical research is criminal fraud. And every one of the MDs is being lied to and taught wrong. So every one of these professors needs to take our classes and be retrained, because the next time, you're going to get this proof of immunity. You're going to get it at every school. We're immune. We exceed the CDC recommendations, which aren't law, And the FDA is criminal in that. GMO food, glyphosate causes cancer. Get it out of our food. They got enough to do. Every single one of those shots, not one has been tested, double-blind, placebo-controlled study, like I do for every single thing I've done in my life. Every single time you add a new agent to a protocol, you test them all individually and all together. You formulate them together. You don't make them additive. And we're being lied to at every step of the way. Even, the doctors, it's not their fault. So that's it. It is their fault from this day forward. From the sound of my voice, 2 Chronicles 7:14, humble yourselves, repent. If the government says do it, do the opposite. Fear only the Lord, fear only the Lord, God, or bow down to the cult of Fauciism and inject away. It's fine with me. But each of us has that pro-choice. And that's where pro-life is and always will be. And nobody, Medicare, you're going to give me my money back. You're going to give me all of my money back, and we're going after. Hey, it's only a few people. I just named all of them. Let's find out who paid the Ventura County Star. Let's go after John Coffin and depose him. Let's show the data that I have. Let's show the Lipkin paper. They're doing it right now. Lipkin's, Tom Renz. Let's go. Let's get this and let everybody else have their freedom and go back to life in their businesses. No more small businesses, no more benefits, no more. You can't force me to poison my family in order to get my paycheck. I want my paycheck for the job I did. You don't get to destroy our country, our small businesses ever again. Work independently. Take back your country. Only we can.
Beautifully said. You're a fireball. I love having you on here, Dr. Judy. I get jacked up. I think I make the mistake of going to the gym before I talk to you. I should go to the gym after I talk to you and go do some push-ups and start yelling. Guys, if you go into the description, you can find the book. I highly recommend it. It's beautifully written, and Dr. Judy, I mean, your patriotism is it's inspiring.
Well, it's only thanks to this church, and honestly, it's only thanks to these people who stepped up at every step of the way. Because, again, all I could do was scream most of the time because I could see what was going to happen. And, the last time I was on the High Wire live was, I literally taped it in July of 2021. And I had trouble speaking at the end, as you can see with Dale, because I knew the people were dying. And my daughter-in-law died a month later, denied life-saving treatment. Yeah, the right to try. You don't have the right to try if the doctor is if you're going to be liable for the treatments, and that's what they're doing. If Child Protective Services is going to take your child, if you do something, the doctor, this is the sound of freedom. Oh yeah, the child trafficking, where they're going? To the pedophile places called hospitals in San Diego. And they're being killed by chemotherapy that is poison. They're being killed by those drugs like Ozempic. They're being practiced on like my mom was. Eliquis. They bled her out. She didn't die of cancer. She didn't even have cancer. People are being diagnosed with cancers. There's no such thing as stage 0 cancer. No cancer patient should have ever been put in a mask. And we have to stop this. And if doctors won't walk away, then we can walk away from them, and we'll guarantee you'll get well according to God, as God knows. Fine. How do you get well in your brain? How do you get over fear? We don't fear a disease. What? God's given us everything we need. I'm sitting here. I have Ebola. My David was as sick as anybody. And in the 20 years I married him, he was sicker when I met him than he went and married. And when I saw that autopsy the day after his memorial, When I saw that autopsy, the only reason I cried and struggled in Mickey Willis in the little film he made for him and to honor him is because I just sat there and said, oh my God, it worked. Oh my God, it worked just like the last night. Really, all you have to do is eat this way and you grow new blood vessels, the Berlinta, the other purinergic modulator. You don't think when a man's body is that broken down and how many years he had that COPD, he breathes twice as much as us, and he could still drive oxygen to the tissues with a simple drug called indomethacin, a smart doctor thinking, all the things that the taxpayers have already paid for. We don't have to repurpose anything. They're all there. They should be approved now, and they should be given to people at $3, not $1,000. No more multiplex. It'll take the FDA the next 50 years to validate what's already on the market. So we don't need to think about them anymore. All we need to do is go back to eating whole foods, no GMOs, no processed foods. We know the game. We know how to do it, and we're here to teach you, and it's free. You don't have to pay for it again.
And what was I gonna say? I forgot what I was gonna say. Guys, if Judy and Dr. Judy, excuse me, if you don't mind, we're gonna have to wrap this up in a minute.
Okay.
I have another shot to. Thank you so much for your time. I
So
genuinely appreciate it.
please send everybody in earshot in California to Godspeak Church, Saturday, August 5th at 6:00, because are we going to celebrate the heroes of the faith? All the people who had no idea what they did. We're going to show you how love wins.
Yes, ma'am. Dr. Judy, I love you. Thank you for coming on here. You're a beautiful soul and you're very inspiring.
Thanks, Tommy. We'll see you soon.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Guys, thank you so much.